Hello everybody, it's one of those very exciting videos where people talk about their channels. Now, it's a question thing, a Q&A, if you will, questions and answers. So basically, what is a Q&A? Well, the Q&A are questions that have been put forward by members. So they've been put to me by members, channel members and patrons. These are people who go above and beyond normal support. Normal support for a YouTube channel is to subscribe. That's it, basically. It's free. You click subscribe and it's free. And if you actually want to see what people are doing, you click subscribe and then you hit the little bell so that YouTube knows to tell you every time there's something worth talking about, or something worth watching. You can go one further than that. You can click like. When you see a video come up and you watch it and you think, I like that, if you click like, it tells the person who made it you liked it, which is a nice touch. Or you can click, I don't like. You click on something and then you don't like it because I said something and you disagreed with or something. So that doesn't do anything, really. It just makes you look a bit petty. But these are questions from channel members and patrons. These are people who dip into their own pockets and voluntarily donate a little bit of money every month that keeps the channel running, or helps keep the channel running. Doesn't solely keep the channel running, but it does make a difference. The support is very much appreciated. This also goes as stretches as far as to people who buys the merch and the tat that I've made and stuck on my website, but I haven't got any way of realistically getting people who've spent money on there to write me questions. So I'm going to do it this way round. So I've got a list of questions. I'm not going to go too far with this because I know what these things can be like. And there's important questions in this that need answering. The first question is, why the hell have I bought a piece of paper into a car that will not stand up? Right. And why am I holding this? Why aren't I wearing it? Well, I'm just doing it differently today. So the main question on the mind, this is, and I have to apologise if it's come from YouTube, then it doesn't actually say what your names are. It's just got your username. It doesn't actually say what your name is. But so, although I can probably guess this one, Charlie Manson 4808. I'm guessing your name is Charlie Manson. The main question on the mind of anyone with any car sense is, do you know anyone with an SM? Yes, I do. Jay Leno. He's got one. Mukluj. I don't know what your name is, but it's MCLOUJ. That's all it gives me. Your name could be Clive, for all I know. Okay, Rich, here's a question for you. What's your opinion on the Mark II Clio, specifically the 172182? I think he's asking this because his profile picture is a Mark II Clio 172 or 182. I've owned mine for 10 years, and I prefer it to most of the PSA cars that it competed with from that era. Trying to start a fight or something. Love the content. I feel like Dump It is going to be the gift that keeps on giving. It certainly seems to be that way, doesn't it? It certainly looks like it's shaping up that way. So the Clio. I don't have a huge amount of knowledge of the Clios. My brother had it was a late 172. So it was just before the 182 came out. It was in that sort of dark red metallic that they did. If I can find a picture of it, I'll put one, but I don't think I can find it. I don't think there is a picture of it. And I had it in here for some work, I think once or twice. I seem to remember one of the times the scuttle panel was bunged up with leaves and the car kept leaking quite badly. But I remember driving it and thinking the driving position was actually, the driving position wasn't far off a BX. It was the same sort of driving position, a big wheel that's kind of angled a bit funny like a bus. And it's all a bit the BX is not quite as bad because it's not a smaller car, but the Clio was quite sort of compact inside. But I remember thinking, we put an induction kit on it, a Ram Air induction kit. I bought it for his birthday. And I remember thinking, God, that sounds good. And it flew. It did go. And the mad thing about it was that if you just poodled it around, it would do 40 to the gallon. Quite easily, just because it's this massive. It's basically a 2-litre engine with a Clio wrapped around it. There's no space in the engine bay at all. He took his to K-Tech in the Dorset way somewhere, and they gave him a courtesy car, which was like a johned up Clio. It was roll caged and had a noisy exhaust and ragged to within an inch of its life. But he dropped his off to have the cam belt done, and they pretty much had to take the front of the car apart. I think they have to take the front bumper off and all sorts, because there's just no room in it. It's like Fiat Coupe 20-valve turbo type thing. So, well, I'm preaching to the choir. You've got one. You probably know all this. Why am I telling you this? Yeah, I quite like them. I think their time has come, actually. They've been cheap for quite a long time, but I think you get a cup model, you know, with the speedline wheels and that. That's a good looking. I mean, I'm not so much into the 182 with the slab-sided wheels and the extra exhaust and everything. They look a bit cheesy, but yeah, a 172 Cup in that blue with the speedline wheels. Yeah, I think their time's come. I think they're probably one of the last proper hot hatches before they got stupid. You know, before they started putting massive turbocharged engines in them. And because hot hatches used to have small turbocharged engines or big naturally aspirated engines. That was a way of doing it. It was like either a bang average engine but with a turbo on it, or a pretty trick engine that was naturally aspirated and a little bit bigger. Or, in fact, you could be Daihatsu and put a pretty trick little turbocharged engine in your car. I think that's one of the last proper hot hatches before everything started getting a bit silly. That and the EP3 Civic Type R. The car that my brother replaced the Clio with was one of the new breed of hot hatches that was getting a bit silly. That was a Mazda 3 MPS. And he said his home, and he's not a car guy at all. He knows nothing about cars. But he said to me, it's faster than the Clio. Undoubtedly faster than the Clio. More comfortable, more refined. You know, it does the whole job better. But it's not as fun. The Clio was more fun. So I think their time has come. I think they're going to start shooting in value, because I think that's probably one of the last proper hot hatches. So keep hold of yours. Scottish Car Enthusiasts and Trends TV. If you are attending Rustival 2, I don't know. Rustival Reloaded, I'm calling it, but I don't think they are. What car or cars are you thinking of bringing? Well, I can't drive more than one car at a time. I am many things, but I'm not magic. I was at one point thinking of taking this, which is a car that doesn't even appear on the channel. I'm only sat in it because I've just done a rolling road with it to test out how it's doing, and I've shared it with channel members, or I'm going to, because I said this car's not on this isn't a main channel car. It's just like a side thing. That's why I'm sat in it, and it's very comfy. I was going to take this, but I don't think I will now, because the back end is clanking its tits off. I think the rear arm bearings have had it, so I will not be doing that, because it's just going to knacker it basically more than it needs to be. Tried to take Hilda last time, gave up. This time, it went to Bewley. I mean, and that's at least a tenth of the distance. Maybe just under. We'll see. Worst case, I've always got to dump it. But yeah, we'll see what happens. My guess at the moment is it'll either be Hilda or dump it. And I should imagine if my wife goes as well, which she did last time, she'll probably take a Saxo, because I'll say to her, please, can you take dump it? And she'll be like, no. And she'll take her Saxo. So it will probably be Hilda in the Saxo or dump it in the Saxo, which would be quite boring, because they're both like the same car underneath. I could bring the Sirion, couldn't I? But then it's like I've got none of my cars there. They're all hers. We'll go for Hilda. Let's be positive. Hilda's going to Rustival. David Chandler, 9260. It's a strange name, that. I thought his name would just be David Chandler, but his parents have named him David Chandler 9260. Strange thing to... Has there been any interesting client car... Oh, client. Not customer. Client. I'm not that posh, mate. Any client cars passing through my hands where the owners haven't wanted them on YouTube? I really wanted to make a video. That's a good question. No, not really. I've very rarely... The only videos of customers' cars I've done, I mean, I could probably count them on, what, one hand, two hands? Depends which postcode I come from, I suppose, doesn't it? What have I done? I've done the Mazda 626. I worked on that. And these are just cars I've worked on. Mazda 626, which is the On the Ramp series. There's an On the Ramp series of videos, and that is, it's on the ramp, on the rollers, and on the road. Dead simple. On the ramp, normally customers' cars, but they can also be on the road, and they can be on the rollers, I suppose. Yeah, on the ramp, cars I've worked on: Mazda 626, the Activa with the control rods, a recent one. I'm trying to think. I've got a TVR here, which are the owners have have given me the green light to do stuff on, but it's such a big story, and it's stalled now for the last 6 months, basically, because I'm getting a little bit messed around with some bits with it. So, yeah, there'll be some stuff coming on that. But has anyone actually refused it? No, I don't think so. If I'm completely honest with you, there's been a couple of times where... There's been a couple of times where I was planned to film something and then I didn't, because they either come and took the car away again, or they had to come and take the car because like their plans had changed or something like that. There's an MX-5 that I keep flirting with. One day I'll do it because it's just a car I really like. And there was well, anyone who's been in here recently will have heard me swearing about it. There's been a Ferrari that looks easy for me to say, suspiciously like a Toyota MR2 underneath, and it took every professional bone in my body to not do a hatchet job on that car. But a customer has bought that car here. Well, it's not his car. That's the thing. The guy who brought it here, it's not his car. So it's like, oh, this is tough. But no, I have to be professional. And yeah, I didn't do it. But man, I'd have had some fun with that. If I get big enough, I promise you, if I get big enough, I don't mean physically, I mean the channel, it won't. But if it did, if I got to the sort of numbers that some of these huge millions and millions of, views YouTubers get, I promise you, hand on heart now, make this solemn commitment, I will buy a Ferrari replica and absolutely trash it. Go full whistling diesel with it. I will, yeah. Or maybe, or a Lambo. Ferrari or a Lambo replica. But not a Lambo replica if it's... I mean, I think all replicas are a bit sad. Sorry, that's just my opinion. I think they're all a bit tragic. But some of the Lambos are like space frame chassis with then the bespoke panels hung off them, kind of like a Lamborghini is. And they look very much like a Lamborghini because there's no issues with the proportions or anything. When you get a Peugeot 406 and a coupe, which is actually a decent looking car, and then bastardize it to make it look like a Ferrari from Wish, I would smash one of those up happily. If you all pay me to do it, I will destroy it for amusement. So yes, that's a long answer to a short question, isn't it? Terrybus13 says, I'm going to be cheeky and ask 2 questions. The absolute bloody liberty. Is the rumour true that I have an SM? Oh, that's not a question. That's just spreading rumours, isn't it? Number 2, what features on modern cars would I like to see banned? Mine this morning would be auto headlights. So many people driving around in heavy rain this morning with no lights on at all. I don't actually dislike auto lights. Auto lights in some of our cars work really well. Well, I do agree that you need to have people driving them who aren't complete simpletons. And that doesn't happen very often. But then that can be applied to a lot of different areas, can't it? So, no issue with auto lights, really. My big thing in cars at the moment, I hate touchscreens. I think the touchscreen phase, the fad, is just the worst thing. I cannot believe, actually, that it passes muster, that it's legal. And I need to have conversations with Alex on this, my journalist friend who knows much more about new cars than I do, and he does concede that some of them are terrible. However, some of them do have very good voice activation or have intuitive buttons that, just on the steering wheel that you can like so easily flick through menus and things. And I don't know, me personally, I think I just prefer buttons and stuff like that. He said, well, it was one the other day, I think it was a Volkswagen or something. It was just appallingly designed. And the reason they do it is because it's cheap. I mean, a lot of these cars, they just have a slab now across the front of the dashboard and a big tablet in front of you. And if it's a left-hand drive car, you put the tablet on that side. And if it's a right-hand drive car, you put the tablet on this side. Rover were ahead of their time. The SD1, and I think the P6 was like it as well, I can't remember. But the SD1, ahead of its time. That's what they're doing now. And it looks awful. They look rubbish. There's these tacky, shiny, flat screen. Ugh. No. Hate them. The only thing I would say... Oh man, can you imagine an SUV with a touchscreen? The only one I think that's been integrated semi-well is that little Honda City, is it? The electric car with the fish tank and like the little cameras in the either end and that wood they have. I like some of the modern cars, the designs... things like the wood effect, or the actual wood they have. And I like this sort of, some of the fabrics we're returning to are proper fabrics, not this, which is probably because they're recycled and feel like a tarpaulin, but you know, they look better than leather. I'm done with leather. So yeah, I think I like the way that it's going in many ways, but the dashboard on cars is just abysmal now. We've completely lost the quirks, the individual character that a dashboard can bring a car, you know. They were all so different, and now they're all so bloody awful. Oh, and them stupid scrolling indicators, the ones where they go, oh, Christ, how council's that? Jasper V70205 CTBX has got even more of a mouthful than David Chandler's, isn't it? Do you think these are usernames, not actual names? Maybe. Do I have some other old photos and stories of cars from the past you haven't shared yet? Oh, God, yes. Tons. I'm actually doing a little mini version of it on Threads. I've kind of left Twitter now, because it's full of twats, basically. Well, there's one less there now that I've left, and I've started going on Threads, and I think people are trying to recreate the little car community that was on Twitter on Threads. Will it work? Nah, I don't know. I think Threads is a little bit clunky around the edges and stuff, but I'm doing a little bit of sharing on there and a little bit of posting and talking about. I'm basically going through every car I've owned, and there's been over 70 of them, so it's going to take a little while. So yes is the short answer to that. How much Pepsi do I drink in a day? None. Pepsi Max is what I drink. I don't drink actual Pepsi. I mean, that would be bad for you. That's got sugar in it. Pepsi Max is healthy. Way too much is the answer. Do I have some connection or affection to Renault cars? No. 16 Valve, a YouTube channel. He's asked many questions here, but I'm going to let him off because he is Steve. He's asked many questions, but he's a very nice man, so I'm going to let him off. Describe my YouTube channel in one sentence, and you're not allowed to be rude about yourself. In one sentence. The place with an SM? I don't know. Watch this if you're bored. Are there any cars these are good questions, actually, some of these. Are there any cars you would never own due to how much you dislike them? That's not a good question. That's a silly question. I don't think I'd own any car I dislike. Would you? Are there any cars you'd never own due to how much you dislike them? Is that just a long way of saying, are there any cars that you'd never buy? Are there any cars that you don't want? Yeah, loads. SUVs. I'll never, ever, ever, I promise you, I'll never own an SUV. No, I mean, we've had, through the business here, have at times owned, there was a Jeep Grand Cherokee and a Land Rover Discovery. They were bought for, I mean, the Land Rover Discovery isn't an SUV, that's an off-roader. I think there's an important distinction between SUV and off-roader. Off-roader is something that's got proper clonk locking diffs and can wade through, I don't know, effluent, sewer, water flowing, Rufford Ford, all that. Made for the job, you know what I mean? Like stuff that actually goes off-road. SUVs would be BMW X5 and then horrible Mercedes and like fake off-roaders, stuff like that. I don't know what Grand Cherokee would come under. It did have some bits and bobs. To me, SUVs are now, you know, all this modern guff that's just people pass off as normal cars, where you just sit high in something heavy for no reason. Like, you just got a ton of space underneath it, with all your ground clearance that you're not using for anything. In fact, you've taken away some of you've got some extra ground clearance for no advantage. It's only disadvantage in every possible way. Handling, fuel economy, ride, you know, safety for pedestrians because you're higher off the floor. So if you hit a kid, you're gonna... No, that might get me demonetized. Let me go back. If you have an accident and a child runs out in front of you and they become unalived, that's more likely to happen in an SUV or something with a high bonnet. Some things do have a high bonnet. Vans have a high bonnet. Some things just have to have a high bonnet. It's just the nature of the beast. that is the way it is, and that's fine because they all have a purpose. But an SUV doesn't. An SUV is used instead of a hatchback or an estate for no reason. Yeah, going back to the stuff before I started ranting, we had off-roaders here, or SUV off-roader, whatever you want to call them, for towing, because the Land Rover was one of the only things that was rated to tow this trailer. 3.5 ton trailer. And Land Rover didn't get bullied by the trailer. Did quite well towing it. Didn't really move either when it was connected to it. Whereas the Jeep hauled ass when it had the trailer on the back. 4-litre petrol. Or LPG. But it did get bullied by the trailer quite a lot as well. So, yeah, I wouldn't own an SUV. Ever. Yeah, you know, with the caveat that unless I had to, you know, because you can't, even a van, you buy a big van to tow a trailer with. A big van, they're only rated to tow like 2.2 tons. The next one is, if Citroen never used the hydropneumatic suspension system in their cars, do you think they would be as coveted now as they are? I don't think are they massively coveted? Or is it just a bit of a niche that that sort of exists in its own little echo chamber of people who love the cars? How popular are they actually? Because if they were actually popular, cars like CXs, GSs, BXs, Xantias, they'd all be worth a fortune, but they're not. You know, you look at something bang average from the 80s, a Sierra, a Cavalier, I wasn't going to say Montego, but they're kind of laughed at, aren't they? You know what I mean? Like cars like something that's unremarkable, just street furniture from the 80s. If it's a Cavalier, it's worth more than a BX. Because it's a Cavalier, because people in this country, worldwide, yeah, maybe it's slightly different. Maybe in Europe it would be slightly different, but in this country, certainly, I don't think Citroens are particularly coveted. If they didn't have the hydropneumatic suspension, it's very interesting. It's kind of like a bit of a Back to the Future thing, isn't it? If you go back and change something, how does it affect the present? In some ways, I think, would they have just ended up like Renault? Like, would there have been an element of engineering, the whole kind of engineering thing that Citroen had, that, you know, they made them push the limits and try to come up with very complex things to improve cars? Some of them worked, some of them didn't. Whereas Renault did the same thing, but kind of on a smaller scale, because they weren't putting gas and oil-filled suspension in their cars. And then, you know, if Citroen hadn't got hydropneumatic suspension, would they have been as brave in other regards? Would they have pushed the limit? The SM, if it didn't have hydropneumatic suspension, it couldn't have had speed-sensitive steering. It didn't. Well, it had hydraulic turning headlights. It was a different circuit, but you know, it couldn't have had weight-regulated. DSs and SMs have weight-regulated, fully powered brakes, which is absolutely bonkers. And for its time, would it have had all that if it wasn't for the hydrogen? I don't think you can really take hydropneumatic suspension out. You want to be really simple about it. You could say, well, they'd just be like Peugeots, because they would. And the conventional Citroens that are the same as Peugeots underneath, so you've got your Saxo instead of your 106, or your Zara instead of your 306, or ZX instead of your 306, or Xantia instead of... No, that's not hydropneumatic, isn't it? You know what I mean? The standard one, the AX instead of the 106 Mark 1, that kind of thing. You could say, well, the Peugeots would be more popular, because the Peugeots are more popular now. A Peugeot version of any of those cars is more popular than the Citroen one. The only Citroen that ever got close, probably the Saxo, and that really is just down to the fact, I think the Saxo was... It looked a tiny bit more modern than the 106, like Dump It. The 106, if you drive the Saxo and you drive the 106, the Saxo just looks a bit more modern. It's not, but it just looks it. The Saxo is really the only one that got close to Peugeot, I think, in that regard. And that's probably because they looked a bit more modern and they were a bit cheaper. So I think really you've got to look at it and just say, well, modern Peugeots or Peugeots from that era, any Peugeot really. It's only, I suppose, if you went into the noughties and you could say the C4 and the 307. C4 wins that one, doesn't it? C6 against the 607. C5 against the 407, the later C5. In terms of like looks and desirability, I think most people probably think the C5 looks better. But yeah, by and large, people would go for the Peugeot. So you'd say, well, if you've got two cars that are kind of the same, and people already go for the Peugeot version of it now, Citroen without the suspension, that rule would apply all the way through. All that rule would apply all the way through the range of Peugeots and Citroens, and so Peugeot would ultimately be way more popular than Citroens are. They are more popular than Citroen, but they'd be even more so. However, if you go back and think about it a different way, when Peugeot were forced to take Citroen over, because French government couldn't get Renault to do it, because Renault was kind of part state-owned, and Citroen was seen as a bit of a right wing's the wrong way to put it. But like Peugeot was more socialist, and Citroen was more extravagant, because they made some sort of luxury stuff as well as pauper stuff. They just made all sorts of stuff. So when Peugeot were forced to take them over, Peugeot were making some pretty staid and plain cars, dependable but conservative, sort of in design and everything. And then in the 80s, Peugeot found their mojo. Peugeot suddenly got going. They got the chef the suspension. They got going. They perfected ride and handling. Absolutely bossed it in the 80s and the 90s. Is it coincidence that they absolutely bossed it after they took Citroen over? Like, there might be some new faces in the building who knew a little bit about ride and handling. Don't know. Could be wrong. But, yeah. And the only reason Citroen knew about ride and handling is because of all their expertise with, well, DNA from doing the hydropneumatic cars, I suppose. That's how they perfected it. Obviously, the 2CV wasn't hydropneumatic, and that was engineering genius as well, but in terms of suspension. But, yeah. I can't help but think, you take the hydraulics away from Citroen, the hydropneumatic suspension out of Citroen, then you don't have the Schefter suspension at Peugeot anymore. You see Back to the Future? Marty's mum, she changed completely, didn't she? Back to the Future 2. So, if I could own a BTCC race car from the 90s, what would it be? Oh man, any of them. Anything I could afford. I think it would have to be... It's really boring to say it because it's predictable. It would have to be one of the Peugeots, I think, for me. I'd probably want Patrick Watts's 405 because it's got the same engine as this, kind of. It's not exactly the same. It probably is lightly modified. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities. But if it was a car that I could buy and just sit and look at it and just sort of like just get nostalgia, it would probably might be Cleland's Cavalier from '95. Just because that just reminds me of... I see that car and I feel happy. If I ever see that car driving around a track or on a picture or anything like that with a little column shifter, and I just feel happy seeing it because it reminds me of when I was 11. Yeah, it would either be the Peugeot. I'd just be fascinated by. I'd then get the Peugeot and I'd take it apart and I'd look at every little thing. And go, oh, that's what they did there. Oh, look what they did to this, because I know what all the brackets looked like before they took them off. Whereas with the Cavalier, if it was just to put in a man cave or woman cave, it's not a cave full of women, it's and it had like a glass box and you could just put a car in it on display, it would probably be the Cavalier, I think. As long as it had some battle damage on it still. Rickard Rydell imprint in the back of it. Out of all the cars I own right now, well, Steve's really taking the piss here, hasn't he, with his questions? He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out of all the cars I own right now, what's your favourite to drive? I'm sat in it. Easily, I'm sat in it. BX16 valve. This is the nicest BX16 valve I've ever driven. That's not by accident. It's taken ages to get it to drive as well as it does. No, that's bollocks. It actually drove quite well when I got it, but I mean, it's to drive enough of them to get an understanding of what's good and what's not and how you can improve them and little things you can do to improve the feel. It's all about the feel. Everything you know, the gears, the steering, the pedal feel, everything like that, the weight of the pedals. Yeah, the controls, basically, the interface, and then getting the knocks out of it and the rattles out of it and everything like that. Yeah, this is. I just enjoy driving this car so much. I could just drive this car non-stop. Never get bored of driving this car. Hilda's good fun, but if you go on a motorway in Hilda, like I'd have to get to Rustival, yeah, you're ready to get out of it again. Whereas this, I could drive this anywhere. I'd happily drive this around the world. Because it's just that it does everything. If I want to just sit back and cruise in this comfy seat, I can. If I want to change down 2 gears and spin it to 7,000 revs and drive like a knob, I can. Go far, A to B, cross country, it's quick. It covers ground well. It's got room in it. The only thing that's not good about it is how stuffy it gets in the sun. But I don't even care about that, to be honest. I'm just happy driving it. So, Grumpy Talk. Oh, this is Phil. Grumpy Talk has done 2. Question: social stroke antisocial. Any plans? This is like a members meeting thing I was on about doing here at the workshop. No plans, but it's not forgotten. So the short answer to that is no plans, but it's not forgotten. I plan to do something. I just don't know what the plans are. And then the other one, any chance of doing a t-shirt of a car battery with greased up terminals? Asking for a friend. No. Tagora 2664. Exactly how annoying is it when people just turn up at your place and want to be your YouTube friend? Really annoying. It's really, if you ever want to know, like, if you ever want me to look grumpy, turn up. Just rock up. And you will make... I get grumpy when people ring the phone. When customers ring me, I get grumpy because I'm like, well, you're stopping me doing what I'm trying to do. Just message me and I'll call you back, or I'll message you back. And to be honest, ringing me I don't even like, because I forget what I say on the phone. I forget what I tell people. If it's written down on a message, I can go back to it. But yeah, I don't like being distracted. I'm very, very, very easily distracted, and I find it really, really hard to maintain focus. So if the phone rings or someone comes in or whatever, it just stitches me up completely. And it puts me in a bit of a mood. If it happens to be someone who's just watched a YouTube video and wanted to come see me, I kind of think that's like the entitlement of it. Like, you know, I mean, I know where some of the footballers live for the team that I support. I know where, you know, I know a couple of them, which houses they live in. I'm not going to go knock their door and go, oh, I really like you the other day. You played very well. No. So, yeah, you know, it is very annoying. Please don't do it. Channel members, and I've said before in channel member posts and things like that, or fellow YouTubers, I suppose, because I kind of know what they're going through. Yeah, like, you know, pre-booked, pre-planned, if you're invited, then yeah, fine. But yeah, I have customers. I'll pre-book customers to come down here and things like that. That's fine. And you know, I speak to customers on the phone and people I know. That's fine. You know, mates happens, but being distracted is a problem for me. And if it's just someone I don't know who's just watched a video, the hard thing to remember is when you're watching a YouTube video, you're seeing someone on the screen now like this, and it's almost like you know them, but you don't. I'm a stranger. I'm a complete stranger to 99% of people who are watching this. Probably more than 99% of people who are watching this. So you don't know me. All you're doing is seeing what I've recorded and put out there in a video. I try and be kind of genuine. I try to just... I don't act any different. I just be me. You know... But I know some people don't. Some people do put on an act. There are YouTubers out there, I know some, who act differently off camera to what they do on camera. They have a brand to protect or whatever. So, yeah. But you know, you don't know people. You can't... If you just rock up... and you may be always probably with good intentions... But yeah, it's very frustrating. Please don't do it. Please don't just show up here, because this is a business. YouTube is not a business for me. YouTube is a side quest. My main business here is me working in a workshop, buried in customers' cars. I try and work all day on, struggling, especially in the heat, trying to keep focus and things. It's really difficult. The distractions from just people who aren't actually. I've had someone come in the other day and said. They might be watching this, so I'm not trying to be mean, but a guy turned up the other day in a BX, and he just wanted me to have a look at it. And I'm thinking, like, oh, what you want to book it in for something? Like, what's it need doing? No, I just wanted to get your opinion on it. And it was like 10:30 in the morning. I'm working. I'm not... You know, the thing is, when I work on a customer's car, I've got a clock. Because there's no book times in a lot of these cars. There's a clock that I start and I stop. So if I'm working on someone's car, if there's no book hours on this car, not with TVR, there's no book times in TVR. So it's like, right, okay, start working on the car. If the phone rings or if I have to stop or whatever, if I have to go to the toilet, whatever, if I have to stop for some reason, I'll stop the phone, walk off, do what I need to do, come back, start, carry on. So it only records when I'm actually working on the car. That's how I bill them. If someone comes in, I always forget to stop the phone because you just... focused on what you're doing. I can't focus on more than one thing at once. So, yeah, I'm sure it's well-intentioned. No offence is taken, but you will make me grumpy because it's kind of like it's a little bit entitled. Just if I invite people down, I invite people down. It's the same for anyone. I know Ian Hubnut had grief because some bloke got on the tiz once because he wanted to stop and have a cup of tea. He'd figured out where he lived and wanted to stop and have a cup of tea with him. That's mental. That's mental. You don't know these people. You don't know us. You might feel like you do, but you don't. Trust me, there are some things on here I could say about how I think, and I would lose so many subscribers overnight. And I don't have many to start with, so that's why I have to be good. We've moved on to Patreon questions now. We've only got 3 left, you'll be pleased to know. Jeff Longley asks a very important question, actually, this. This is a very important question, and this is in the thumbnail, so everyone's going to be... If you got this far without getting stressed, because I wasn't addressing the question in the thumbnail, and you haven't clicked off, if you stuck with it, you're about to be rewarded. When am I starting the SM? An excellent question, Jeff Longley, one of the longest supporters, I believe. I recognise that name. So the SM is... long story short, how long have I been going? Too long already. So the thing with the SM, so I've got the SM. I've got an SM. I've got the SM. And then there was a little period where I go through mental phases where I feel like a bit overwhelmed or a bit like imposter syndrome. I get imposter syndrome quite bad. And there was a phase where I had the SM and I was just excited to have it. And I got so excited I started a YouTube channel. And then as time went on, I started to think, damn, I've got an SM. That is bloody complex. That's above my abilities. And I had a real crisis of confidence, like a Tom Cruise movie, you know. So I knew. So I've joked about this time and time and time again, and people laugh when I say it. And I'm stood there thinking, like, no, I'm a little bit serious. I will just sit in it. It's a dream car. It's a dream to have it, just to behold it, just to be near it. I will just sit in it. But you know, there comes a time where that's not enough. So when I had the donor shell, if you remember that one, which I've still got, but I can't show you anymore because people will throw things at the screen. When I had that, there was a sense I was getting a little bit overwhelmed, and I had a real crisis of confidence, and I couldn't do anything on the SM. I didn't have the time then to work on it, and I certainly don't have the time now. But I went through a phase where I was too nervous to work on it, and then I had a lot of other things going on. Lots of other cars needed jobs doing. My own cars, I'm kind of starting to get on. Well, I feel like I'm getting on top of them a little bit, but I'm not really. Because the Activa came along and then worked great and then broke. So I'm back to square one. But I've got the Imp on the road. That was the main thing. And then this is back on the road. So I have started. Well, the C6 came off the road. So I've back to where I started, aren't I? Yeah. Basically, long story short, and this is a very long story. I've snapped out the way of thinking like, oh, I can't do it. You know, I'm not confident enough. Now I'm confident enough to do it. But it's just I've been struggling with the time. However, I'm going to make time this autumn. So the weather is just too hot at the moment to be doing heavy duty stuff, but because it needs heavy duty stuff, it needs the engine taken out, it needs the interior taken out and putting up on a spit roast and flipping over, and that will all be in the videos. The other thing that's worth pointing out, and people won't probably just think this is just bollocks and I'm just making up excuses or, you know, supposing things. I think if I'd have started doing the SM videos way back when I started the channel, if I'd have started on the SM properly then, I think the videos would have been awful. I think they'd have taken ages. You ever see the Cecily videos? Jesus Christ, it took so long to get through. And I've learned a lot about pacing and editing and kind of doing this more as technically this is a part-time job now. I'm a part-time YouTuber. So I think I think I'll do a much better job with the SM now. Even and the car as well. Having had Audrey here, which was not a DS. Yeah, I've learned a lot about working on that kind of construction of car. And there is a lot of similarity with an SM and a DS. It's not all the same. There are some differences. The SM is kind of like halfway to a CX, halfway like a DS, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'm in a much, much better place to attack it. And I will be attacking it in the autumn. I've already had to put the schedule back once because my schedule was to have the engine and interior out by the end of October. Or have it on a spit roast by the end of October. I can't remember which one it was. That's probably not going to happen now. But hopefully not far out. So when the weather cools down a bit and backs off, and we get September out of the way, because September's mental. Tons going on in September. When we get September going, done and dusted. And October done and dusted, because there's something pretty big happening in October, but I shall be doing a live stream to announce that soon. That's when the SM starts properly. And I have the SM and I have the TVR. And the TVR will be my respite. So if I get stressed out working on the SM, like, God, I've had a gutful of this, like I've overdone it, I need to step away for a bit, I can go and do something on the TVR, meaning that we have the TVR sort of up on the road, hopefully for, the new year. If there's a Rustival next spring, I will take the TVR to it. So that's where we're at. So yes, I am starting the SM properly. I mean, I have started it already. That's all silly, really. I have started the SM already. I started it ages ago. It's got no front end on it. But yeah, it's only superficial, isn't it? We know I can just put the wings and bonnet back on and it's a car again. No, it will be started properly in October. Submarine Stopping Baldy. It's a great name, that. Hi, Rich. Have I ever owned an AX? I like you because you've not been stalking me. Because if you've been stalking me online, you know I've had many AXs, but you don't know that, so you haven't stalked me. You are a good person. They are the contemporary to the BX and precedes the Saxo, so I'm assuming you might like them. I've had 5 AX GTs and 1 GTI, and technically I've had a 1 litre as well. In fact, there's a video of my GT, my last AX I had. There's a video of it on the dyno. It had done 245,000 miles, that car. Great story behind it. I will do a video one day and tell the story of that car. It's on. There's a forum post on one of the forums about it, because I basically took it on, got given it for free, but it was in the south of France, so I had to get it back over here. But I'll go into it one day. I very much like AXs. Oh, I don't know if I'll have another one. I always wanted to build an AX 16 valve to an AX GT with a Saxo VTS engine in it. Whether I will now, I don't know. I think I've left that little bit of my life behind. But no, I do very much like AXs. And Andy York has the last question. Thank Christ. Are there any PSA cars from the 90s, production that started in the 90s, to be specific? I appreciate your specifics. That you think look better post facelift? To my eyes, the only one I can think of is the 405. Well, production didn't start in the 90s of the 405. Unless you mean the facelift came out in the 90s. No, I don't think there are. I don't think there are any. I think all the facelifts look worse. I think the 605 was a very minor facelift. They don't look any worse, the facelifted ones. I think they're kind of just, I think they all look quite cool. The 405, pretty similar, really. It's a pretty minor facelift. But does it look better? I think in sporty, I don't know. I think in sporty trim, the 405 looks better as a phase 1. But then the T16 does look good. I do like an MI16 with the 15-inch wheels on it. I don't think the facelift looks any better, but I don't think it looks any worse. Whereas if you look at any other PSA car... Oh, no, hang on. Yes, there is one. I'm missing quite an obvious one. Peugeot 306. Peugeot 306, without a doubt, the facelift looks better than the original. I genuinely believe it does. There's something about Peugeot 306 is one of the only cars ever made that nearly looked as good at the end of its production as it did at the beginning of its production. Like, it aged because design moved on a lot. Ford came along and tipped the design genre on its head in that segment. But if you get a wire edge, like a real late 306 5-door, they did a Meridian model, I think it was, but you had like the Cyclones on it, the 15-inch Cyclones and the little GTI skirts, GTI 6 skirts, and like in a dark grey or a black or a dark blue or something like that. mint condition, 5-door. So 5 doors look better, to my mind. That's a good looking car. That's a cracking looking hatchback. And the way they drive as well. And if you get a HDI, get like a 2-litre HDI, remap it. That's all. I'd have one in a shot. I would happily have one of those because it's all the car you'd ever need. You'll get 50 to the gallon out of it without trying. It'll be fun. Around corners, the handling's good. The ride's exemplary. It looks nice. The only thing that lets the 306 down really is the interior. It's a little bit gacky. But yeah. No, the 306, yeah, the facelift looks better than the original, I think. I do like the original. I mean, like, you know, it's like an XSI or something. In the blue. It does look nice. But then along comes GTI 6 and a Rally. So, yeah, I know 306 is... So, what's the question? Look better post-facelift? Yeah. Yes, the 306. I don't agree with you on the 405 because the 405 started production in the 80s. Must have read your question wrong. But I also think the 405 didn't look better or worse. I think they both looked about the same. Had advantages both ways. And the same with the 605. There aren't any Citroens that I can think of that improved. I think every single Citroen got worse. Every time it was facelifted, it went downhill. In the 90s, anyway. Yeah, no, 306. So that concludes all our questions. Thank you for sticking with it. If you didn't, then, well, you don't know what you're missing, do you? Because you've gone and I'm talking to nobody. I'll try and edit this down into something that's... I wanted it to be about 15 minutes. So we've got a live stream coming up soon. The live stream will contain some important news. Some big things are happening. I'm very excited for October now. I wasn't particularly, and now I am very much so. It's going to be quite different. October I'm looking forward to. Yeah, I should be at Rustival. All being well, I'll be there. All being well, I may even be doing something to do with the thing that's happening in October. We'll see. Other than that, yeah, I've got some more Rolling Road videos due to come out. There's going to be 3 or 4 more being filmed over the next couple of weeks. There's one more in edit. There's a dump it bonus video. It's not a diary, it's just a repair. Using about £7 worth of parts. I've got there's something I could do on Hilda. I've got a tomato one I need to film. God, yeah, it's just never ending, is it? Right, thank you for watching, and you can go now.